wildlife management section. Um, I'd like to introduce Laszlo Beyer, the co-chair of this session. My name is Tíme Asuli-Zakar. I wish you have a successful presentation. First speaker is Jocelyn Vayala Burudi. I upload her presentation. Are you here, Jocelyn? Can you hear us? Me?
Yes, I can listen. Working.
I
Can you hear me?
cannot.
No?
I cannot hear Jocelyn.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Laci, te hallod az első előadót?
Nem. De te hallasz engem?
Téged igen? Jocelyn, can you
Ahhoz
hear?
Hear you. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Just a moment, please, because my screen is a bit minimized, so I can't see the presentation that you put up clearly. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Jocelyn.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to start then. So my name is Jocelyn Weyala Burudi. I'm a first year PhD student at the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences under the supervision of Dr. Katona Christian and Esther Kovacs. And I'll be taking you through the human wildlife conflicts around the Nairobi National Park in Kenya. This is a review. And I chose to study this topic because the study area is currently the Nairobi National Park is an iconic park in Kenya, most specifically because it is found in the middle of a growing city. So previously, when this park was being set up, the future had not been predicted. The park was the boundary was constructed in 1946 during the pre-colonial era, and at this time they didn't project the future to see what was going to happen around the park. So currently there are so many settlements that have come around the park, as you can see in the map below, in the picture. There are so many settlements that have come up. The city is expanding, the populations are expanding, So the park encounters so many challenges. And given the close proximity and its location in the middle of a city, it presents human wildlife conflicts. So, human wildlife conflicts are any negative interaction between humans and wildlife that result in the harm of either party or damage to property. And most of these conflicts generally occur in the African continent because this continent is fast developing, and most of the natural areas that had been set aside for the purpose of conservation and are now being taken up by human populations. There are so many anthropogenic activities that are going on and taking up these previously naturally preserved areas. So this is the case scenario of the Nairobi National Park, and there are so many human wildlife conflicts that go on around this specific area. And I've already mentioned that its close proximity to the city makes it exposed to so many challenges. So in this the review, I focused on the causes of the conflicts, the types of conflicts, and the mitigation methods that are used for these conflicts. So I went ahead and selected different papers using the Scopus, Google Scholar, Web of Science, and I came up with 112 papers, but through selection using themes, particularly the themes that I've mentioned in the previous slide, that is the causes of the conflict, the types of conflicts, and the mitigation measures. So I was able to pick out the papers that particularly focus on the Nairobi National Park and the papers that mention the themes that I have mentioned in the previous slide. I found 23 publications that mainly focus on this area, and I chose to study the papers from the years 2012 to 2022 because I wanted to see the trends over time and I wanted to have knowledge spanning from previous years to the most recent years. And out of these papers that was selected, um, the results are indicated in the first graph that shows the causes of human-wildlife conflicts. The mainly mentioned cause of conflict is the human population increase. Right now, the population of Nairobi stands at approximately, that is according to the 2019 census, a census that was just conducted recently. It stands at approximately 6 million people and is projected to increase over time. So 19 authors mention that human population increase is the major cause for this conflict because as the population increases, they have to go into the natural areas. They are finding places that they need to settle. So these natural areas are being turned into build up areas. So the area around the park, especially there is a particular area called the Athi Kapiti Plains, which was previously used as a wildlife dispersal corridor. This area has now been occupied by human populations, and therefore this process it brings in a big challenge when it comes to human wildlife conflicts because the wildlife can no longer use this area as a wildlife corridor because when they go out from the park and try to migrate using this corridor, then they encounter the build up environment, the human population, so it causes conflict. There is also urbanization. The Kenyan economy targets to be a middle economy by 2030. That's a vision in Kenya that by 2030 there's supposed to be a middle economy. And this has prompted fast urbanization and infrastructural development. So there are so many mega projects that are happening in Kenya. For example, there is one mega project that happened that is the construction of an expressway. It's called the Southern Bypass that ended up cutting almost 50 square kilometers of land from the national park. There is also the standard gauge railway that was constructed and started functioning in 2017. Also, this cuts a big chunk of the national park's land because it goes through right through the national park. So urbanization and infrastructural development is also eating into the park, and this has been a major cause of conflict because when urbanization and infrastructural development happens in the park, then it ends up eating into the space of the wildlife. There is wildlife disturbance, which prompts the wildlife to move outside the park and hence comes into contact with the human populations. There's an increase in the human wildlife conflicts. There's also been land use changes, particularly associated with the changes in human activities. Previously, the area surrounding the park was occupied was occupied by the Maasai people that were native to this area. The Maasai people practiced pastoralism and wildlife rearing, which was which was easily integrated with wildlife conservation. But right now, the human populations that are occupying this area have taken up activities such as agriculture, crop farming, and this does not intertwine with wildlife conservation. So the land use changes has also led to land use changes, especially introduction of crop farming and horticulture activities in this area, quarrying and setup of business enterprises in this area has also led to an increase in the conflict. There is also scarcity of resources, whereby you find that both human beings and the wildlife have to share scarce resources such as water. There are only a few rivers in the city. There is a particular river called the Mbagathi River. It supplies water for both the wildlife and the human beings in this area. So whenever there is a scarcity of water, since humans are more powerful, they will tend to divert all the water and use it for their own uses. But this now leaves wildlife conflicted because they have to move out of the park and they have to go into human settlements trying to find water, trying to find the ungulates will move out trying to find pasture. So the scarcity of resources is also mentioned as one of the major factors. Other others are natural calamities, pollution, and habitat destruction. Moving on, livestock predation has also been mentioned as a major type of conflict, whereby there are quite a number of lions that move outside the park and they end up feeding on the livestock in the surrounding areas. This is followed by retaliatory killings, whereby human beings end up killing the lions because they attack their livestock. There is also spread of diseases, especially the East Coast fever from these are the wildebeest. They spread diseases, the East Coast fever from the wildlife to the livestock. So this is also one of the types of conflicts that is mentioned. Crop destruction, poaching, property destruction, and invasive species, among others. Uh, these are just example of a few pictures, some pictures on what happens on the ground. And lastly, the mitigation measures that are mostly mentioned are formulation of land use policies that integrate wildlife conservation and to ensure coexistence of human beings with the wildlife. Fencing has also been proposed and the maintenance of these fences. Um, the land use changes also, community participation, compensation, which all these are currently ongoing, but they need to be upscaled if at all the Nairobi National Park is going to survive in the middle of this iconic city. There is also supplementary feeding recommendations. We have supplementary feeding of the animals in the park so that they don't keep on moving outside and going into human society, in human settlements. Also, proper maintenance of the wildlife fences and timely execution of compensation schemes, and also land use changes that integrate wildlife conservation with human activities. Thank you so much for listening to me. Any questions? And if at all you want to reach me, then I have left my email here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for your presentation. What kind of pollution can you mention in this area?
Okay, there is water pollution, particularly into the Mbagadi River, because there is the Langata barracks that is found just next to the park. So all the effluents and sewage that is produced from the Langata, the barracks is emptied into the park, into the Bagadi River. And this Bagadi River is the same river that goes into the park where the animals drink from. So there is water pollution, there is noise pollution. The southern bypass road just passes next to the park. So this has caused so much disturbance whereby you can no longer find animals on that side of the park because of the noise that is on this area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just a question before. I really like your. Can you listen? Okay, so I really like your presentation. It was very interesting for me. I have a subject here. It's urban wildlife management, especially about human wildlife conflicts. It was very interesting, and we saw a slide about the reasons why they are going into the urban area and why they have interactions with humans. But I didn't see there between the reasons the hunting, especially of the effect of trophy hunt. So my question that what do you think there is any connection of trophy business and human wildlife conflicts? And I especially speaking about the increasing of the population, especially in the target species because of the trophy hunting. There is any connection? What do you think, or not?
Actually, currently, there's no trophy hunting in Kenya. It
Okay.
was banned back, I think, in 1970s, so it doesn't happen anymore. But I think there is also the main problem in Kenya currently is poaching,
Poaching,
poaching
yes.
for bushmeat. That is
Yeah.
also a very major problem because these animals, whenever they escape the park and go into human areas, you find most of the people that are living next to the park are not. They're they're not they're not able to meet their protein needs. So for them to be able to meet their protein needs, they also go out and they're able to hunt, especially the ungulates. And if you read by there is a particular researcher, he's called Professor Ogutu. He talks so much about the decline in wildlife population in the Athi-Kapiti plains as a result of the poaching, because everybody is now the poaching is I mean hunting is not allowed, but poaching happens for the bushmeat. So it has led to great declines, especially for the wildlife populations that used to occur. By 2017, we had like almost only 5,000 of these animals left. There is the hunter beasts that are almost going extinct. So I think poaching is the major issue, and I think yeah, that's the major issue for the decline of wildlife populations, especially the ungulates. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Thank you. Let me to contact you later if it's okay for you. And I'm really
Yes,
interested
please.
about this topic because of my presentation anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Okay. The next lecturer is Bence Tamás.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning.
Okay. Yeah. May I start?
Yes, you can start.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Bence Tamás. I learn agriculture biotechnology at the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Today, I would like to present you my work, which I did with the help of Orsolya Yvette Hoffman and Ákos Malatinsky when I learned conservation engineering at the same university. We studied the macroinvertebrate fauna of garden ponds. Yeah. Today, when planning urban areas, special attention is paid to their role in biodiversity conservation. Another trend in our society is the spread of garden ponds. In our research, we investigated how these two factors are linked. The ponds we studied are mainly built for decorative purposes. At the same time, they act as stepping stones between the urban areas and natural habitats for many organisms and are part of Green Plus Blue infrastructure. However, their decorative value can only be preserved at the cost of expensive electricity consuming machinery and chemicals, which are harmful for the environment when they get into natural waters. Still, they have recurring problems which are filling in with mud and eutrophication or algae blooms, which are required lots of hours of works from the owners in every 6 months to keep the decorative value of the pond. In our study, we looked at two types of garden ponds. The first we called the traditional garden pond. This one is found in most gardens today which have garden ponds. To be clear, so what exactly we meant by that, let's break down in our heads. First, and perhaps most important, is a waterproofing layer which can be prefabricated rigid walled pool or a slightly better option, the combination of geotextile and pond liner, which allows more freedom in designing the bottom of the pond. Typically, in both cases, the most important factor in designing the shape of and layout of the pond is to be aesthetically pleasant, not to be as faithful copy of nature as possible. Plants are chosen by the owner on the basis of the ornamental value without considering whether they are native species or not. The species and animal species are mostly fish, usually goldfish or koi, but nowadays other ornamental fish are also becoming more common. Maintaining its decorative value can only be done with expensive electrical equipment and chemicals, and only with ongoing maintenance you can get a beautiful traditional garden pond. Um, the other type we studied was called the ecologically stable garden pond. This is my innovation, which I have been working on since primary school, and my research has been awarded in several scientific competitions and forums. To understand how it differs from the previous type, let's break down this as well. The pond bed is always made of geotextile and pond liner and focus on its decorative and not focusing on its decorative value, but more to resemble on natural pond. One element of this is that I create more depth levels than in a usual traditional pond, so there are many more species of plants and animals that can live in. Machines and chemicals are replaced by a pre-planned food web that maintains the biological cycle, so it prevents algal blooms and significantly slows down the filling in process. I plant the plants in mud so their roots can more effectively take up nutrients in a natural medium than the algae, and the symbiotic bacteria can also be more efficient. For a new pond, I always build up the food web by one level at a time. to prevent the omnivores fish from killing off macroinvertebrates or certain plant species before they can get to the right population size, and thus preventing the collapse of the ecosystem. This all eliminates the need for a full water change in every 6 months and the use of chemicals of electrical devices. This solution is permanent and only requires intervention in the event of an accident. And because of all this, this pond fits into the approach of the circular economy and the research management view. Our research goal was to compare the aquatic macroinvertebrate fauna in traditional garden ponds and ecologically stable ponds. To give some background, previous researches has found that natural freshwater habitats are among the most vulnerable ones on the planet, and they are the least able to adapt our urban environment. Any garden pond type can act as a stepping stone between freshwater habitats for invertebrates and vertebrate species. Traditional garden pond owners usually choose plants mainly for their decorative value without considering whether they are native or not. Thus, there is a danger of spread of invasive species. The various water treatment processes degrade the biodiversity of garden ponds, and if they reach natural water bodies, cause damage there too. We studied 5 traditional and 5 eco ponds in the area of Vác in Hungary and Pest County. The dots on the map shows the locations of the ponds. I collected samples from each pond on a monthly basis from different regions of the ponds. We divided them into 3 regions: open water, riparian vegetation, and deep water vegetation. We took into account the abiotic factors as well. So 2 traditional and 3 eco ponds are located in the more urban parts of the city, while yes, 3 traditional and 2 eco ponds are located on the outskirts. We inspected the vegetation, the top layer of the segment, and the water surface. Samples were obtained mostly by hand collection and with the use of nets. The specimens that were visually identifiable were released. Other specimens were preserved in 4% formalin. The identification was done by using microscopes and identification books. The data were also analyzed using statistical software. By identifying 340 specimens observed or collected from 90 sampling points, we were able to identify the 45 taxa to species level and 1 taxon to genus level. 2 species were found only in traditional garden ponds and 23 only in ecologically stable garden ponds. The 2 species found only in traditional garden ponds are the acute bladder snail and the spotted malaria mosquito. The number of macroinvertebrate species was much higher in the ecoponds studied, and many more species were found only in this type of ponds. To mention a particularly interesting example, that the Tetraganatus tirata, a spider species on the left side of the photo here, is interesting because it was only be found in ecologically stable ponds, and currently under protection. Its nature conservation value in Hungary is 5,000 UF. The number of the taxa identified in the traditional garden ponds varied more widely, ranging from 3 to 21, while the ecologically stable ponds there the number ranged from 33 to 45. In conclusion, I would like to mention that the ecologically stable ponds around large area are also home to a space that's protected in Hungary. The scientific world has so far almost completely ignored the study of the macroinvertebrate fauna of hobby ponds, with exception of the UK, where serious research is very carried on, and there is a project in Hungary as well called My Pond project. We study hobby ponds. The reason of that hobby ponds usually not a subject of scientific research is because they require the consent of the owners to be inspected, and of course it has less economic value than other kind of lakes. But anyways, it provides important data on the population of different aquatic and near water and species that lives near water bodies. Most types of lakes are homes to native freshwater organisms, and provides a corridor between natural waters and part of blue-green infrastructures. Uh, there could be a community funding one day to encourage garden and pond owners to create ecologically stable ponds on their lands, which is supported by the spirit of the EU biodiversity strategy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Bence, for your interesting presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next presentation, next lecture will be Joanna Maribel Soria-Aguirre. Please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, Joanna.
Hello.
Hello.
Let me share. Okay.
You can start. We can hear you.
Nice. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanna Soria. I'm a PhD student for the Hungarian University of Agricultural and Life Sciences here in Hungary. I'm from Ecuador, and it's a pleasure to be with you today to present my work, contribution on nature conservation related citizen science projects to learning, attitude, and behavioral change of participants. I think most of you are related to this term, citizen science, but for the ones who are not, citizen science basically is the work of non-professionals in science, the contribution voluntary of them. And when these contribution and aims are related to nature conservation, it becomes citizen science for nature conservation, as the name mentions, and for tackling mainly environmental challenges. Mainly in the fields of conservation biology, natural resources management, and environmental conservation. It has been flourishing the last few years. Citizen science has been extremely useful for the early detection of a range of number of new environmental problems. But how do they do that? By undertaking many research in places and skills that would not have been possible otherwise. And the biggest recognition of this citizen science field value came in 2013 with the multi-organizational report, State of Nature, called This report concluded that 60% of the 30,000 species examined in this study have declined over the past 50 years, and most of the understanding of these trends in populations have come from citizen science project data. As this field is flourishing and the numbers of projects have been rising, um, the numbers of studies that study the impact and explored the outcomes in terms of effectiveness of citizen science, or in terms of exploring the impacts of these projects in nature conservation. Um, all these impacts have been mainly studied by professionals or scientists, experts. And as the field is growing, it seems important to fully understand these impacts, but from the side of the participant, by the comprehensions of the citizen scientists that we call them. So under this context, the aim of this review mainly is to explore these studies where surveys as self-reports were applied to measure the impacts of nature conservation citizen science projects on volunteers' first learning or knowledge, attitude, and behavioral change during or after the participation of these volunteers. So we undertook a general literature review that was conducted by using mainly Web of Science, Google Scholars, Scopus as the main search engines. And we conduct a qualitative content analysis based on a priori codes formulated based on the framework proposed by Tina Phillips, called Framework for Measuring Individual Learning Outcomes from Participants in Citizen Science. So we modified a bit and we add the attitudes instead of interests and motivations that she proposed. And the list of these chosen articles is a representative study sample that give a thorough picture of how participation in nature conservation citizen science project has impacts the volunteers' learning, knowledge, attitudes, and behavior of the participants. So the dimensions that we have board and we have explored in our project, when we explored the self-reports related to learning, we took in account the self-responses and self-reports related to environmental or ecology knowledge, the species knowledge, the recognition of the skills knowledge, and the scientific learning. When we took in account the attitudes, we explore mainly the self-reported reported towards science, toward environmental topics, and those attitudes that evoke emotions. And for the behavior, we explore those related behaviors to nature conservation, to lifestyle activities, to behavioral intention, and to science property. Also, as I mentioned before, we wanted to explore the common characteristics of these projects. So we describe these features that the citizen science projects share, where gains in knowledge were linked to attitude and behavioral change. And this can be used in future citizen science project initiative or in current projects that are going on, mainly that aid nature conservation. So our results show that from a bigger number of papers that we found, we choose 25 articles. From those, these were distributed all over the world, but mainly UK and United States were the ones that concentrate more projects that have evaluated self-reports from citizen science scientists. And in Latin America and Asia, where the less concentration of the projects that have evaluated these outcomes from participants. These projects were launching from 2011 to 2020, but the publication of these results just have been flourishing in the past 3 years, 2 years, and January of this 2023. The outcomes of the categories that we have evaluated have been more studied in terms of the knowledge learning, the attitudes, and the behavior together, and the attitudes have been explored in less quantity than the other categories that we studied. So, our results also show that when the learning comes into the picture, the species knowledge were the ones that have more impact in the self-reports of the participants, meanwhile the scientific knowledge was less report from the volunteers. And those projects that have applied learning resources and supplementary learning features has had higher learning outcomes than the ones that didn't apply much more learning features. According to the attitude, the self-reported attitudes were higher and had more impact when the environment attitudes came into the picture than the attitudes toward science. When we explore the behaviors of people, they report more pro-environmental behavior and behavioral intention than the actual behavioral change. This actual behavior change was higher, had more impact when the people had a special connection toward the target species that they were participating with in the citizen science project. And you can see here in the slide some of the reports and samples that the people mentioned during the assessments of the citizen science project manager that they apply. The common characteristics that we found of the projects that have higher impacts in behavior, learning, and attitudes of the participants were that mainly the well-designed learning plans that the citizen science project managers undertook. Those projects had higher impact on the categories that we studied of the participants, and also the collaborative design between volunteers and scientists also had positive impacts mainly on attitudes and behaviors, and also the social interactions and personal contribution between participants had also positive impacts on attitudes. So they should take in account in the design of the projects these features as well. And it was important also the contribution between multidisciplinary professionals, partners, when the evaluation of the projects came into account. It means including professionals like psychologists, more others, than conservationists and project managers. Also was important to build in trust and meaningful experience inside the citizen science project for the participants, and it resulted in positive and higher impacts on behavior and on attitudes towards science and environment of the participants. Our conclusions show mainly an increasing number of natural conservation citizen science projects that have been evaluated self-reports of participants in the last few years, mainly the past 10 years. And we found evidence that participation in natural conservation citizen science projects in fact influences participants' environmental knowledge, attitudes, and behavior. The gains in knowledge, as I mentioned, in scientific knowledge was the self-report and should be included in the learning plans since the beginning of the natural conservation citizen science project designs, which may also lead to a better attitude towards science. Despite the fact that volunteers' experience with nature conservation citizen science projects were generally positive, they typically resulted in just behavior intention than actual carry-out activities. Except, as I mentioned, that when personal connection with the target species occurred, which resulted in actual behavior change by undertaking specific actions by the participants. And finally, now the knowledge gained, the attitudes and the behaviors are not isolated impacts one from each other. So how people perceive, understand, feel, and describe the nature, it relates to the understanding of the three of the categories about the natural world. So one come from each other, so they are not isolated, as mentioned. So I would like to thank you for your attention and leave you with a last thought, that is environmental problems that we all face here and would like to solve are behavioral problems, and environmental solutions must also have behavioral solutions. And one strategy to tackle that problem is citizen science with the power of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Muchas gracias por la presentación. See, and that's all about my Spanish, okay? So even my wife is Mexican, but I'm too lazy to learn a language. So thank you very much. Really, it was really interesting. And I think it's a very actual problem, worldwide problem, especially on the areas of the Earth where the population, for example, in Latin America or in Asia, also is really high. What do you think about? Because this is here in Europe, we see this problem like people who are living literally in the nature, and they have daily connection with the nature, and their daily income, their daily profit depends on the nature. They see these things on a very different way. And how can I say, for them it's not so romantic and not so beautiful, this question like nature and ecology, like for you and for me, for example, like for us who are working in the nature and with the nature. What do you think? Because in Europe, this is kind of evidence, but what do you think is a worldwide problem, or how is this in Latin America? How you can describe this problem?
As you mentioned, for example, in the indigenous part of Ecuador, let's say in the Amazon region, this is something romantic, as you mentioned. This is something that people sometimes don't really understand because maybe they don't have access to education. It's something that they do in their daily life, valuing the nature and having a positive behaviors towards the nature is something that is normal for them. It's not something that should be studied. And I, in my personal experience, we should take the academia and mainly the students should go to nature, have some experience, life experience with them, and learn from them, and carry out that values to the city and to the schools, to the universities. So we learn from them, and they are kind of examples for the people that are used to the concrete, to the buildings, because I think nowadays we are the problem. We don't connect too much with the forest, with the nature environments. So including them in the projects, including them in the let's say field trips of universities, and bring that experience to the academia from them.
I'm 100% sharing your opinion. So it's the same what I think. So thank you very much. It was really interesting. Later, as I told you previous, I would like to use some materials and methods in my subject, human wildlife conflict and urban wildlife management. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Joanna.
Bye.
Next lecturer is Andrea Charlil.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Then-
Okay, you can start.
Okay. Hi, Andrea Gerardin, and I will be talking about using microalgae as a biological tool for plant protection. Okay. So in agriculture, we have to face we have to protect our plants from loss from many pests and diseases, and we mostly overcome this problem by using chemical pesticides. But we but chemical pesticides have many ill effects. For example, although in the initial spraying they will have good effect, but after a certain amount of time they will be resistant, so it will not effectively control the pests. It is also harmful to natural enemies and beneficial organisms like bees and ladybirds. And then the synthetic pesticides, they seep into the soil, and then from there move into the water, and they cause pollution. And this water is consumed by us, which is in turn harmful for humans itself. So what are biopesticides? So biopesticides are obtained from natural compounds, for example, plants, and in my case, microalgae. We also use other organisms like bacteria and fungi to control these pests. So why do we need to use biopesticides? We know that there is a trend towards organic farming. Recently, many people are choosing to use biopesticides as an alternative to synthetic pesticides. And Europe is also promoting this by in form of European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, where they are expecting to reduce the use of chemical pesticides by the year 2030. And biopesticides are biodegradable. They do not, so we do not face, so they with time they will not remain in the environment. They're very eco-friendly, and there is no residue on the edible part of the plant, so it's safe for humans to use. Now, in short, what are microalgae? So microalgae are unicellular organisms. They're mostly eukaryotic and microscopic, and they inhabit a wide range of habitats. For example, marine, freshwater, and terrestrial. They're available in all three places, and they use photosynthesis for production of organic and inorganic materials. Okay, so so the important microalgal species are Chlorella, Spirulina, Nanochloropsis, Phaeodactylus, Anabaena, nostoc, and ulva. These species are mostly used for study of biopesticides. Now, there are two modes of action. So they work firstly by direct antagonism, so by production of secondary metabolites. So the second disruptions and enzyme inactivation in plants. And another mode of action is activation of plant immune response. So microalgal produces some polysaccharides, which triggers the plants to produce elicitors, which is a form of defense mechanism. So we can see microalgae produce some inhibitory compounds against plant pathogens. For example, bacteria is inhibited by certain antibacterial compounds. The microalgae produces some cell-degrading enzymes, for example, chitinase and anatoxin and microtoxins, which can be used to control against insect pathogens. Now, I'll give you some examples of microalgal strains that are effective against bacteria. So Chlorella vulgaris can be effective against species like Clavibacter, Xanthomonas, and Pseudomonas. Spirulina platensis can be used against Erwinia, which is a very important pathogen in apple. And Senedismus can be used against Pseudomonas and Xanthomonas. Chlorella vulgaris and Anabaena species and Calothrix can be used to protect against Phytophthora and Pythium, and this is by production of bioactive compounds or endoglucanase. When we talk about fungi, we can use microalgae species like Anabaena and Calothrix to protect against phytopathogens like Fusarium, Alternaria, Aspergillus, Sclerotinia, Macrophomina, and Fusarium. These are very important plant pathogens. The examples are Chlorella can be used for protection against Rhizoctonia, Nanochloropsis can be used against Fusarium, and nostoc also can be used against Rhizoctonia and Sclerotinia. And in case of insect pests, we can use nostoc to protect against cotton bollworm. It acts as an antifidant. Amphora coiformis can help against nematodes, for example, melodogyne, by production of secondary metabolites. And Anabena can be used to protect against Podoptera litoralis by production of secondary metabolites. Now, what are the challenges of using microalgal biopesticides? So we need to produce select efficient strains that are very efficient, very strongly can strongly inhibit the pathogens. The initial cost of set mass production is a bit expensive, so that could be a challenge. And the whole process is not yet sustainable. So since we use chemical compounds for the extraction of the organic compounds, it's not really sustainable, but after time, we can move to a more sustainable terms of production. And the interaction of microalgae in natural environment is not really known, so that is a challenge. In this image, you can see a graph where we can see that the interest in microalgal biopesticides is increasing. So from the year 2019, we can see a boost, a drastic increase in interest. This is exhibited by increase in publications. And to conclude, I can say that microalgal biopesticides can be successful as a standalone treatment, but we can only realize their full potential when they are combined with techniques of IPM. Microalgae have a long evolutionary history, and they are available in diverse ecological settings, from aquatic to we can expect a lot of secondary metabolites that can be obtained from them. A limited number of biopesticidal extracts have been reported from seaweeds as of yet, but then there is a potential for us to find more metabolites, and that's why they represent a largely untapped resource for discovery of novel biopesticide compounds. That's it from me. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
It was
you.
also another really interesting presentation. Only one question that you spoke here about biological kind of protection against pests and a lot of things. I have a question, a quick question that 50, 60 years ago here in Europe, there was an endemic species. The name of this little bird was a farmland bird, a typical one. It's a gray partridge. It's a little galliform bird, and they ate a lot of pests before, a lot of insects and everything, and they worked as a kind of biological protection for the crops. What do you think that nowadays there is any kind of role for this kind of protection nowadays on the crop fields, or the only solution to use just chemical pesticide, or maybe there is a kind of middle way between the chemicals and between the biological protection, and somehow we could bring these two things together?
Okay, if I properly understand the question, you mean the use of predatory organisms to control pathogens, right?
Yes.
Pests. Yeah, it is widely used. Like there are many parasitic species which are used against insects. It's mostly against insects. So it exists, but then it's not 100%. Like you cannot totally rely on it.
Of course.
Like even ladybirds. So that is why we like chemical is right now widely used, and there's a limit. The limitation with biopesticides mostly is that it's difficult to store them, and like field application is not that easy as compared to chemicals right now, because you need like when you use bacterial biopesticide, there could be a formation of a film, and so these kind of field and technical limitations is why it's not that popular yet. But then even for predatory species, like if like in greenhouses it can be really efficient, like if you use predatory organisms, but when you use it in open conditions, it doesn't normally give you the exact results that you expect. Like they
Yes.
could move away from the area, and sometimes there is risk of like I don't know if you know about the example, but there's this ladybird species that was introduced in I don't remember the exact country where, but it was predatory. It was beneficial, but after a certain time, it became an invasive species. It damaged. It caused threat to the local ladybird species. So these are the problems with predatory, I guess. I hope that answers your question.
So I think somehow somehow somewhere between the two, that of course the chemical protection and somehow between the biological protection, maybe to decrease the amount of the chemical pesticide and to a little bit decrease the
That's why I mentioned IPM is important. Like
Yeah.
you need to use whatever biological techniques you can to use, and in extreme cases, as you should use chemical as a last resort.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was really
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
Andrea. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Orsolya Szirmai. Okay. Can you hear us, Orsi?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning for ladies and gentlemen. The title of my... Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank
Perfect.
you. Thank you. The title of my presentation is Successful Colonization of Forest steppe species in different areas abandoned from traditional cultivation. Here you can see some typical features of the Eurasian forest steppe zone. It's a very complex and diverse vegetation, which provide important habitats for many endangered species. Forest steppes belong to the most threatened ecosystems due to habitat loss and insufficient protection. The Eurasian forest steppe is a transitional vegetation between closed forests and steppe zones. The longitudinal extension of forest steppe zone is 9,000 kilometers, mainly from the Carpathian Basin to the Amur lowlands in Russia. Forest steppe was once typical habitat types in the Carpathian Basin. Over the centuries, among others, historical land use practices played a major role in shaping the appearance of the forest steppe zone in the Carpathian Basin. In recent decades, traditional landscape has changed in many European countries. Abandoned lands are found in several regions in Europe as well. In Hungary, the proportion of abandoned areas is the highest in the North Hungarian mountains. In this region, extensive farming was the traditional form of landscape management, where the valuable remnant patches of vegetation survived, mainly in areas among the cultivated plots. Nowadays, relatively little information is available about the recolonization ability of forest steppe species. In our research, the following questions were addressed, among others. How does the total species richness, relative cover, and diversity of forest steppe species of abandoned land vary by farmer cultivation type and age group? How did the relative species number and cover of habitat categories in cultivation types change after abandonment? The study site is located at the foothills of Bükk Mountains in the North Hungarian mountains. It covers an area of 4 quadrat kilometers at elevation 180 to 280 meters above sea level. Botanical samplings were carried out on abandoned plots of different cultivation types, like vineyards, arable lands, pastures, and hayfields, which altogether we call them grassland types. We divided the abandoned plots for 4 age groups: 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 20 years, 21 to 30 years. Minimum 3 plots were botanically recorded for each abandonment type and in age groups. In each plot, minimum 5 zoological samples were carried out. The sampling size were 4 quadrat meters. During the data analysis, average total species number, relative cover values, diversity values, I mean Shannon diversity values, and habitat preferences for the total and separately the species in each abandoned lands were used. The determination of the range of forest steppe species was based on the work Kuhn and Bölöni, Jakucs, and Moser list. Here you can see the list of forest steppe species in the investigated area of the abandoned lands. In the sampling units, there were altogether 245 vascular species, out of which 72 forest steppe species were recognized. Among the latter, some protected species occurred as well. Let's see the results. In the examined period, the number of forest steppe species in abandoned vineyards and arable lands increased continuously, similar to the average total number of species. In the abandoned grasslands, the number of forest steppe species increased from the second decade, which trend is an opposite to the average total number of species. Let's see the covering values of forest steppe species. In the examined period, the average total cover of forest steppe taxa increased in all 3 types. A similar trend can be observed in the case of abandoned vineyards and fields. Furthermore, the average total cover of forest steppe species was clearly the highest in the abandoned grasslands. Oh, what happened? Okay. What can we say about diversity values? In the youngest age groups, the diversity was the highest in abandoned grasslands, while it was lowest in abandoned arable lands. On the other hand, in the oldest age group, the diversity of vines was the highest. Concerning the habitat categories, we can say that in the vegetation of abandoned areas, 3 habitat types were the most characteristic. As you can see, disturbed habitats signed with gray, the dry grasslands assigned with red, and the forest steppe assigned with light brown. The average total cover of forest steppe species, as I mentioned former, increased continuously in all of the 3 types. while opposite to the former, the proportion of species in disturbed areas continuously decreased in the former vineyard and arable areas as well. In the grasslands, they were only present in a minimal proportion during the examined period. At least let's see the conclusions. The number and proportion of forest steppe species have been steadily increasing in abandoned vineyards and arable land, indicating that these species are able to rapidly colonize these areas. The increase in the number and cover of forest steppe species in abandoned grasslands reveals that the replacement of the species pool of these grasslands is not necessarily accompanied by degradation, but also by the appearance and spread of valuable natural species, if the habitat is sufficiently patchy. As abandonment progresses, the proportion of species habitat categories diminish in abandoned vineyards and arable land. The cover rates of disturbed habitat species were negligible for all three types for the third decade after abandonment. This indicates that the change in the quality of the species pool. Here you can see some pictures of forest steppe species. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Orsolya, for your presentation. Okay, next speaker will be Natalia Pitaossis.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
Hi. Thank you. Just a quick question. Can I control my presentation or?
No, you control your presentation.
Okay.
Of course, you put the slides and everything in your tempo.
Can you control?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Today, I'm going to just do a short introduction of a topic that we have been working on for a while now with my supervisors. So my name is Natalia. I'm a Colombian PhD student in the wildlife management department in the the same university as everyone that has come so far. So we are going to talk about a very small preliminary study that we did about the effect of wild boar rooting in Border Escobar in Budapest. So these are my co-authors. Feher Adam, Katan Christian is one of my supervisors, and Tsenteri Chava, it's my other supervisor. So, well, the first thing that we need to understand, I don't know how much you know about wild boar, is that they are a very strong species. They are an ecosystem engineer, which means that they really affect every environment that they are present at. In this case, of course, wild boar is native to Eurasia, so it's native here, but it's behaving as an invasive species because it's reproducing really fast and at a very steady rate all over the continent. The problem with wild boar is that they are omnivorous, they are very big, and they can cause a lot of changes in the environment when left in these big amounts of population. So, for instance, right now in this picture, you're seeing a wild boar doing feeding behavior. We call it rooting because it's looking for roots to feed. This behavior is more common during the winter period, during the colder months, because there's nothing to eat outside. So they're just digging, looking for seeds or for insects or for roots or something that can be useful for their growth. However, in other parts of the world, the wild boar presence can be very damaging because this amount of disturbances in a location that is not ready for getting this amount of changes can be very damaging in the long run. So then they are affecting the ecosystem structure, the ecosystem functions, the whole overall systematic continuity of the environment wherever they are present. But we already know, since they are so big and they are so prevalent in many places, we know about their interactions with other species. We know about the effect that they have had in other vegetation, for instance, we even have some information about seed dispersal carried out by wild boar either in their fur or by their feces. But there is a bit of a gap in the knowledge about the soil changes that happen based on the wild boar activities. So in this picture, you can see the middle. They use their noses to dig, so they don't dig with their paws, you call it. They use their nose. So they're very strong, muscular noses, and they use them to dig up, and they cause these big holes. If you ever go for a hike or for some place here in the hills, you can see this kind of disturbance. These were wild boars. And of course, if you see something like this, you can think, well, it's destroying the whole place. We need to do something about it because it looks like a big change. However, we can argue that because the species is from here, it's a native species, then the environment is kind of ready for this kind of disturbance. The problem is not that much about the nature of it, but about the amount, because there are so many now. So we want to understand, is it really a big change or not? Is it really a big damage? Maybe it can be beneficial. We did this study also in the Babat Valley here in Godolo. We are in Godolo in the university. And we found out that maybe it can even be good to stop like erosion processes and sedimentation processes, so it can actually be beneficial for the whole environment. We are trying to figure out which one is it, if it is an impact in the positive or negative sense based on which point of view. So now in this study, we focus on 3 areas. So the routing is the middle of the hole. When you are checking these holes that they make, it's just the middle. We have checked the ring, which we call the surrounding area, because they dig and they move the soil in the, like a crater, let's say, like a volcano, let's say. So then in that area also, and the control area, which is like a bit farther. So around 1 to 2 meters farther away in a place that is similar to all the surrounding locations. And we wanted to know in this pilot study, what is the effect of this behavior on the soil characteristics in Bodeshkova. So first off, in soil properties, so like organic carbon, organic matter, pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and also in the soil composition. So if they are similar in between one another, if it changes in between the routing and the ring, between the ring and the control, and so on. So the way we did it, we took a small sample collection. This is just the Impala preliminary study. So we took 5 routings, 5 big, deep routings that they did in this area. We took 3 samples. So these 3 samples, control, routing, and ring. And then we analyzed them using a near-infrared spectrometer, which is this machine that you see here. And this one lets us know all the characteristics of the soil. Then we analyzed statistically the results that we obtained using a MANOVA to compare the differences in the different categories. So by the location, so routing, ring, and control, and also by the properties, so the pH, organic matter, carbon, and so on. This is the study area. So for everyone to locate in Budapest, in the Buda side, here is the Jane-Goodall tannage vein, the protected area. And here's Bodeshkova. This is the area. It's completely full of routings here. And it's a hilly area, so we can compare based on different locations in the hill. And now the results that we obtained by this study, we saw it coming, basically. There is more soil organic matter in the control sample, so outside in the non-disturbed area, than inside the routing or the ring. Because of course, if they're digging, they're getting closer to the parent rock, which is, it has less organic matter. So of course, there's going to be a significant difference there. One interesting result that we got was that we also have a change in the potassium level. As you know, potassium has a very unstable ions. So, you know, it can be washed down really easily if it's open and if the soil is not that compacted. Of course, after this, if you ever get to see a routing, try to touch it, and it's very loose because of course they're moving the soil, so it's not going to be compacted, nice soil for plants to really grab on, because they are losing potassium, which is the one that allows them to grow like stronger stems. So this is in this preliminary study, we found these 2 changes in organic matter, of course, as we expected, but also this one is very interesting because it allows us to know, okay, maybe this is affecting the vegetation that is present there somehow. And finally, we got the conclusions. So there are differences, as we have mentioned before. Of course, we need to continue studying in this area. This is going to be carried out for more than a year, and we're going to get to see all of the changes that are going to happen in this area. And the main finding of this preliminary study was these changes in the soil composition in this region. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions, please?
Yes, muchas gracias, Kenneth. And where are you from? Sorry for the question.
I'm from Colombia.
Colombia. Okay. I'm sure that you heard about the serious problem what caused by wild boars in the Latin American area, also especially in Argentina. You know, because they introduced them more or less 100 years ago on the
Yes.
European continent to Latin America, also in Argentina, also. And,
yeah, we also have in Colombia.
Yeah, of course, everywhere it's breeding is like crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely invasive species, we can say in Latin America and upper in North America also. They have serious problem around Texas in the south down. So yeah, sure that you heard about the zoohory also, no, the endo and epic zoohory. You know, when this is the phenomenon calling zoohory, when the seeds of the plants are stacking into the outcast, into the fur of the animals, and after they are spreading them, they are transporting them. And another version of the zoohory is like when endo and inside, you know, and after they can spread with the fecal matters, the seeds. They did a lot of research in Argentina also about this one, in Germany also, or in Israel, and they found that they can really change. I mean, in the case of high population, they can really change the environment, the wild boars, in a good or in a bad way, depends, because of course depends of the seeds what they are transporting. You know, this can be a alien species or can be a native species, but yeah, so they are calling them so-called also ecological engineers, we can say that. So I think the wild boars has a serious impact on the environment and the ecology. So absolutely, yes, I think we need to count with them in the future. But as you know, in the past 2 years, we had a serious problem with the wild boar fever, and decreased so much the population of the wild boars in Hungary also. So now maybe we have a little bit less, but in my opinion, this will be a serious problem in the future. I mean, the wild boars, because I'm sure you know that, for example, the game damage what they are causing also on the crop fields, it's a serious problem. So yes, not just but around the world. Yeah, it was very interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Okay, next speaker will be Balázs Bócsi. 1 minute, please. Can you hear us? Okay, perfect.
Good afternoon, dear audience. Today I would like to talk about the morphological and anatomical characteristics of nutria in a Slovakian population. Nutria is a native species in South America, and by the Spanish colonists, it introduced to Europe, and until nowadays it became an invasive species in Europe and some other parts of the world. As an invasive alien species, it has several negative impacts on the new environment or the nature. First one is a negative impact on nature conservation. Second one is on wildlife management. Both of them are similar to each other. It can link to consuming the native vegetation, which can be protected, or mass predation of protected waterfalls or game animals, such like geese or duck species. It can mean a problem on animal healthcare as well, because as an introduced species, it can bring a lot of infects, which can be a negative impact on domestic animals as well. The animal has got several demolition on agricultural lands, fields, by consuming crops. And the biggest problem can be in the case of water management by destructing human-made constructions. The animal until now disappeared in Hungary as well. Questions related to the research. First question was that are the individuals in good condition in the wild? It's related to the new introduced environment in Central Europe, in Slovakia, or maybe in Hungary as well. We wanted to check if the animals are able to survive in the new introduced areas. In that way, we wanted to prove it in the way of serving the body sizes of both sexes, because it can link to the condition of the animals. So if they have a good condition, their way of survive is better. Second question was that if the reproduction of the nutria can be proven by the observation of genital organs, and how can we describe the condition of the genital organs and the number of the sizes of the embryos? In this case, we observed mostly the female genital organs. A research area was taken place in Slovakia and in the southwestern part of Slovakia, around 70 kilometers away from the capital of Slovakia, which is Pozsony or Bratislava. Why in Slovakia? Because now nutria is not a huntable species by the law in Hungary. So we wanted to find a place where it is huntable and which is near to Hungary. As we can see, River Danube crosses the capital of the country. It's not so far from the research areas, so it can be a green corridor, and the animals can reach Hungary easily. Data collection of the in the field. There were 5 sample collecting trips into Slovakia, and the trips happen in different seasons, which means that during the whole year, from spring to winter. The data collections happened in an by invasive methodology, hunting by firearms or trapping. We were able to shot 42 individuals, and we could catch or capture 11 individuals by trap. Regarding the firearms, we used .22 long rifle gun or shotgun, and 1 and 2 door cage traps, which are live catching traps. So we caught all of the animals, when we are talking about trapping, alive. The total number of the individuals that we could take was 53, in which 32 were investigated. From the 32 individuals, 20 were taken in Vághosszúfalu, or in the Slovakian name Dlhana nad Váhom, and 12 in Alsó Szeli or in the Slovakian name, Dolné Šaliby. There were data collection in the lab, which continued the data collection in the field. We had several types of measurements, which mostly regarded to the body sizes. We measured weight, body length, tail length, head width, or hind foot length. We observed genital organs. If we could find, we observed the embryos, stomach content. We observed the stomach content for continuous researches, so we stored them. Or we had notations which were linked to irregularities if we could find some. And we collected muscle tissues for DNA analysis for the future. And for measurements, we used Libre, caliper, and tape. During the data analysis, we counted the average of the given data and standard deviations. Then we used the program named PAST, and we used the normality test. If the data had a median range, we used a t-test. If it had interquartile range, we used a Mann-Whitney U-test. Regarding to the tests, we could find that the population is dense in Slovakia in the given areas, and the animals were in good conditions. There weren't any significant differences between the two sexes of the animals. The body size of them reached those body sizes which are written in the literature based on those data which were related to those animals which were observed in their native area, I mean in South America. So they could reach that body sizes and that condition in the new areas as well. Here we can see some other figures which are similar to the first one, related to other measurements. As an assessment of reproduction, we could find that the number of the embryos can be 11 as well, as we can see in the picture. It would be the litter of a female, which reached somehow more than 5 kilograms. So the average weight reached the half of it. 8 females were pregnant from 19 females, which we have observed. And the average of the number of the embryos reached 7. Average weight of embryos were more than 9 grams. Based on these researches, our practical suggestions are the followings. Newer publications about the species, because few people know about this species. If I would mention the name Nutria, not everybody could know that what's this animal. The declaration of Nutria as a huntable species in Hungary. As I mentioned, it's not a huntable species in Hungary yet, However, in Slovakia, it is since 2009. From the prevention of the spreading of the species, it could be useful to declare the animal as a huntable species. For that, the best would be if we would use as many of the legal methods as possible to stop these animals, to stop the spread of the nutria. I mean, trapping, shooting, and every legal methods. And somehow we should make the nutria hunts popular. In the pictures, we can see some examples. It can be somehow trophy animal as well. And it's an edible species as well in the same time. I would like to say thank you to everybody who helped me during my researches, and to the National Health Protection Laboratory Program supported by National Research in Developing and Innovative Office. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Balázs. What was the reason that you examined the Slovakian population, not a Hungarian?
Sorry, I didn't understand well the question at first. Can you repeat it, please?
What was the reason that you examined a Slovakian population, not another, for example, Hungarian population?
Thank you for the question. My reason was that at first, the way of collecting these samples was by hunting. And as I mentioned, nutria is not a huntable species here in Hungary by the law. So here in Hungary, I couldn't collect them by hunting as a sample. In another hand, I know dense population in the research areas. So with that knowledge, I went to that place, but it's enough close to our border. So somehow I can have some conclusion they can reach our areas as well. And in another hand, by our knowledge, we have some nutria populations in Hungary as well, near to Slovakia or in other parts of River Danube.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really interesting. And if here we are at the topic huntable and not huntable and other things, what do you think? What is the reason in Hungary they are not letting them, not letting the harvesting of the nutria? What do you think about this? And do you think it's a good idea or not? Or can be problematic later? Or what do you think about it?
In my opinion, it can have several reasons. The first and the biggest, based on my opinion, is the lack of knowledge about this species.
Yeah.
If you would ask some Hungarian hunter about the species, maybe some of them just simply wouldn't know about the species, or their knowledge would based on that one day they were bred by fur or meat for that reason. And maybe the lack of knowledge, or another problem can be similar than in the case of beaver. As I mentioned, it has a bigger problem which it can cause on agricultural cultivation. And based on an Italian research, in Italy, it could reach 1 million euro per year. And in the case, if it would become a huntable species, Hungarian hunters should have paid the game damage that it caused. So it can be another problem as well. And I didn't mention the water management problems, which are higher.
Also, exactly.
But mainly the lack of knowledge, in my opinion, about the species in general.
They should think about
Sorry, I can't hear you well.
I'm sorry. Yeah, can you listen?
Not really.
Okay, so I don't know. I just want to say that yes, I think there will be a problem with this PC, just like happened in the 90s with the Muskrat, also with the Muskrat. But yeah, we will see. Okay, thank you very much. It was really interesting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Balázs.
Bye.
Okay. Next speaker is Mihály Márton.
Hello, can you hear me?
That's perfect.
Okay. I don't know what happened with my camera, but it is good if you can hear me. So, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to show you a presentation about small mammals in relation with aircraft safety. Okay, small mammals have a very important role in most of terrestrial ecosystems. For example, they are key members in food chains and food webs. They can forming and maintaining the characteristics ecosystem in a given area. For example, they can spread the seeds, or they can consume many plant species. And this rodent species can serve as bioindicators to monitor the quality of a certain habitat. And if we check the intensively human-controlled systems, in this case, the evaluation of this species is not entirely positive. For example, in case of crop production, forestry, and animal husbandry, they can cause negative effects. For example, the small rodents can consume the crops and seeds. They can contaminating the forage with urine and feces in the forage store, for example, and they can spread various diseases, for example, the tularemia. Okay, after the general problems, we can find more specific conflicts as well. For example, these small rodents can cause problems in case of aircraft safety. They cause these problems not directly. They cause problems mainly indirectly. For instance, they can dig barrow systems, and in case of airports with grassland ground cover runway, it could be a problem because the airplanes cannot landing on these runways. And also they have another indirect effect. It is these species are prey species, and they can attract and aggregate the potential predator species in the surrounding of the runway. For example, in Hungary, the common buzzard or the red fox are typical predator species of these small rodents. And because of this, the population density of small mammal species kept at the at a minimum level, and the airport staff should use only necessary level treatment in this case, and this treatment should be cost effective and environmentally friendly. Because of this, they should know the hotspots of the small rodent populations in their airport. Because of the above mentioned reasons, the aim of our study was to measure the spatial distribution of small mammal population density. Our hypothesis was the small mammal population shows spatial aggregation in the area of Liszt-Ferenc Airport. Okay, you can see on this map the area of Liszt-Ferenc International Airport, and as I can zoom, this white stripe is the studied air highway, and we have 6 study sites, sample areas. These sample areas marked with black on this map. These are parallel, as you can see, with the air highway. Okay, about data collection, we have count or estimate the small mammal hole density in the area of the airport. We have count only that holes which are follow the following parameters below. You can see here these parameters. As I mentioned, we have 6 sample areas in the airport. 4 of them were within 20 or I think 30 is better. So 30 meter from the air highway, and in case of these 4 sample areas, we have count the small mammal holes in 3 stripe transects. You can see these abbreviations here, and we have 2 other sample areas. These 2 sample areas were more than 100 meters from the air highway, and in this case we have used 2 stripe transects to count the small mammal holes. In case of stripe transects, we used 3 200 meters long units. Based on this, we have detailed data about the aggregation of small mammal hole density. Each stripe transect was 600 meters long, 2 meters wide, and the distance between the stripe transects was approximately 8 to 10 meters. And we just walk along these stripes and count the small mammal holes. Okay, the correlation between small mammal hole density and the number of individuals could not be tested directly in the area of the airport due to security concerns. Because of this, we have chosen other study areas in Hungary. On these study areas, the number of these study areas was 12, as you can see here. And on these study areas, we have made small mammal hole density measurements based on the stripe transect method, and we have trapped the small mammals. We used live trapping in this case. You can see here the parameters of the traps and the trap design, but I think it is more important that we have marked the trapped individuals, the captured individuals, and have removed the fur on the diet of the left posterior leg of these small mammals. And we have measured the weight of each captured small mammals, and based on this we have calculated the biomass of the small mammal population in the given study area. Okay, about data processing, we have used, in case of every stripes, the same unit. The unit was the pieces per hectare, and during the data collection on the airport, we have found more than 1,000 holes, and based on this we have used the quantum GIS to make a random point layer, and based on this random point layer we have calculated the random density in the stripes, and the number of random points was equal with the counted holes, the number of counted holes. Okay, statistics. We have compared the measured hole density. So we have compared the stripe transects based on the measured hole density, and also we have compared the stripe transects based on the random density. And after that, we have compared the measured density and the random density in each stripe transect. And in the next step, we have compared the distribution of counted holes and the random points within the stripes. And after that, we have calculated preference, habitat preference based on the distance from the air highway or runway. About results, you can see that we have found significant difference in case of small mammal hole density. In case of the first stripe and the second stripe, and in case of the fourth and the fifth stripes, it means that the density in the first stripe, you can see the measured density here, was significantly higher than the measured density in the fourth or the fifth stripes, and also the density in the second stripe was also higher than the fourth and the fifth in the fourth and the fifth stripes. Okay, and after that, we have compared in each stripe the measured and the random density, and as you can see, I have signed or marked with this star, I think, the significant differences, and you can see there are only one cases when I don't find significant differences. Okay, the next is the distribution and the preference. We have compared the distribution of counted holes and the random points based on the distance from the air highway, and this distribution, in case of this distribution, we have found significant differences. The counted holes were significantly closer to the air highway than the random points. And based on this, in case of the preference, we can see the same result. So the first two stripes, which are closer to the runway, are preferred by the small mammals, and the farther ones are don't preferred. Okay, and the results of the other measurement, the results of the small mammal trapping, you can see on this figure. We have found a positive significant correlation between the small mammal hole density and the small mammal density or population density. This data pair is marked with a circle, and also we have found a positive significant correlation between the hole density and the biomass, and these data pairs are marked with triangle. So based on our results, we can say that the small mammal hole density, the population density, and also the biomass could be higher in the vicinity of the air highway and lower, farther from the air highway. What are the possible reasons of this situation? In winter, it is very important that in winter the airport staff use chemical fertilizers, for example, urine, for surface de-icing, and this urine contains a large amount of nitrogen, which is a continuous source of nutrients for vegetation. And cause of this, closer to the or next to the air highway, we can find higher and denser vegetation, and especially more balanced habitat, which is good for small mammals because they can find here any food source and shelter. And cause of this, they can prefer the air highway and the closer areas. And other solution or other reason could be the material of the air highway. because this air highway, the material of the air highway is concrete, and we know about the knowledge of urban wildlife management that this material, in case of this material, the winter mean temperature could be higher, and cause of this, the winter mortality of the small mammal population could be lower. And cause of this, the small mammal density can be higher in the surrounding of the air highway as well. Conclusions. Our results indicate that it is unnecessary to carry out small mammal population treatment in the entire area of the airport, or at least there is no need to do everywhere with the same intensity. It would be sufficient to perform habitat destruction combined with barrow poisoning in the grasslands within the distance of 20 to 30 meters from the runways. And in the future, we would like to test our results in addition airports and at various times of the year and in many seasons. And I would like to express my gratitude the peoples below for her and for his help, and thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Mihai.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, next presentation. Viktor József Vojnics. Viktor, are you here? Okay, I upload Viktor presentation. One minute, please. I cannot see Viktor's presentation. Okay.
Timi, itt van Viktor, vagy tudja, hogy jöjjön?
Igen.
Jó. Ja, jó, meg vagyunk. Jó, oké.
Hallatok?
Kitűnően.
Szuper.
Látni nem.
Bekapcsoljam?
Ahogy szeretnéd.
Akkor nem.
Oké.
Jó.
Nyugodtan kezdheted, Viktor.
Jó. Okay. Dear scientific committee, my name is Viktor Vojnics. The topic is of the presentation, pollen concentration that's for Santium suspiciens in 2019 in the Northern Great Plain region. Xanthium subspecies. The taxonomy is the Asteraceae. In this species, there have been a lot of varieties. I would like to speak about Xanthium spinosum and Xanthium strumarium. Xanthium spinosum is worldwide as an noxious weed that grows in many types of disturbed habitats, such as pastures, crops, waterways, grasslands, floodplains, waste areas, and sometimes tropical and dry environments. The native range is not known, but they have come from South America, possibly from Chile. The plant is found in various regions across the world, including Canada, United States, so in the North America and Middle and Central America, in Africa and the Middle East, Asian, and Australia. The first time in Hungary, Xanthium spinosum in the 19th centuries, in exactly 1820. The next species, the Xanthium spinosum, is classified as an invasive weed of many crops. It is the biggest problem because the strumarium is not invasive, but spinosum is invasive, and Italicum also not invasive. This plant is a negatively impact crop, such as cotton, maize, sunflowers, tomatoes, soybeans, sugarcane, and other agriculture plants. It decreases the health of the ecosystem. It takes over the 3/10 lost native species, inhabitant, and in the area lowers the biodiversity. It also threatens the health and well-being of the animals that inhabit the areas where it found. Livestock ingest Xanthium spinosum, the livestock will become poisoned and could potentially make its way into a human. You can see in the pictures the right side leaf and the fruits, and the left side you can see the fruits. The plant, especially new seedlings, are toxic to livestock. This plant is also toxic to humans. Bird damage, the sheep will reduce in value. The next species, the Xanthium strumarium. It is also an annual plant. Originates in Southern Europe and Asia, but has been extensive and naturalized elsewhere. Others, such the flora of China and North America. state in origin in the Americans, but early introduced to Eurasia. First date of the Sanctum Stumarium in early 20th century in Hungary. Sanctum Stumarium may have some medicinal properties and has been used in the traditional medicine in South Asia and traditional Chinese medicine. In Telugu, this plant is called Marula matangi. Materials and methods. The pollen concentration was measured with the Burkhardt pollen trap. The measure time was in 2019. The location was in the northern Great Plain region. There are 3 counties: Jász-Nagykun-Szolnok County, Hajdú-Bihar County, Szabolcs-Szatmár-Bereg County. Every county was in the capital of the county was measured. So the 3 towns where we measured the pollen concentration: Szolnok town, Debrecen town, and Nyíregyháza town. You can see the map in Hungarian. The yellow county is the Jász-Nagykun-Szolnok County. Blue colors county is the Hajdú-Bihar. The gray color is the Szabolcs-Szatmár-Bereg County. And this is the northern Great Plain region. On the other pictures, you can see where is Szolnok, Debrecen, and Nyíregyháza. Szolnok and Nyíregyháza, you can see this yellow point. Debrecen is in the green point. You can see the 7-day Hearst type trap. This Burkhardt trap put in building, top of the building, and in the right side of the pictures, so in the slide, the right side, you can see the pictures and thematic shame who can see this pollen trap, and in the bee come with the air to the pollen concentration. This is the A is the pollen trap, and you can measure the 1 weeks, and 1 week's change this trap. These pictures was made in Szolnok, and you can see in the middle or in the central in pictures this trap. It is in top of the hospital building. This is in Debrecen, and this is in Nyíregyháza. So this pollen trap is about 15 till 30 meters height, and yes, in this termin measured the pollen of the Santium. The results in Szolnok, the years in 2019, the total pollen count in all the year is 91. It was the highest pollen counts. The day of the highest pollen concentration was in end of August. Maximum daily pollen concentration is 9 pollen per cubic meter, and the number of pollen days is 25 days. It was in Szolnok. The next slide, we can see the results in Debrecen. Annual, the total pollen count is 36, so it is lower than in Szolnok. The highest pollen concentration in 21 August is early. Before maximum pollen concentration is 8. The numbers of pollen days in 26. The next pictures, next slides, you can see the results on Nyíregyháza. Annual total pollen count in 41. The day of the highest pollen concentration, 25 August. And the daily pollen concentration is 4. And the number of pollen days is 21. Conclusions. The pollen season was defined as the day of which the sum of the daily average pollen concentration reaches 1% of the total amount, and the end of the season was defined when it reaches the 99%. The highest annual total pollen count was detected in 2019 in Szolnok. 91 pieces, and the lowest in Nyíregyháza, 41. The highest amount pollen grains content in Szolnok, 9 pollen, and the highest daily concentration was detected on August 21 in Debrecen, and thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Victor. Okay, next step today, short presentation. Within a short presentation, lectures have only 5 minutes to give their lectures, okay? And the first lecturer is Nicolette S. Gulyás. Nicolette, please give your lectures in some words, some sentences. Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Nicolette? Are you here? Please use your microphone, okay? Nicolette, I cannot hear you. Please switch on your microphone, okay? Okay, now.
Good
Nicolette,
afternoon.
perfect.
Sorry,
No
technical
problem.
problem.
You have 5 minutes, okay? Only a short present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nicolette Gulyás. I work for the University of Szeged, Faculty of Engineering. Today, I'd like to talk about application application of 3D printed turbulence promoter in dairy wastewater ultrafiltration. Sorry. In the European Union and in Hungary, the amount of wastewater has increased significantly in recent decades, a large part of which comes from the food industry, including the dairy industry. Membrane technology is an increasingly common method in water and wastewater treatment, as it has many advantages. No chemicals needed, no hazardous waste, low energy consumption, compact can be delivered. However, in addition to its advantages, it also has its disadvantages. This is membrane fouling. The use of 3D printed turbulence promoter has become widespread in the last few years and can be a solution for reducing membrane fouling. Stirred membrane ultrafiltration cell and model dairy wastewater was used for the experiments. The type of membrane, 50 kilodalton polyether sulfan membrane, we applied three different transmembrane pressure, three different steering velocities, and three different heights of turbulence promoter. It's made from polylactic acid. The picture shows their placement in the filtration cell. The goal is to investigate how the turbulence promoter affect the average flux and resistance values compared to the control, and the height of the turbulence promoter has this effect on these values. The resistance was determined using the resistance in a series model. This model determines the location of the membrane falling on the surface of the membrane. The value of reversible resistance is larger, or inside the membrane, the value of irreversible resistance is larger. The first figure shows the average flux for different pressures. It can be observed that the turbulence promoter of difference has increased the value of the average fluxes is all cases. At a pressure of 0.2 megapascal in the case of low steering velocity, the average flux value is higher compared to the control. Why, as the steering velocities increased, the increase is smaller compared to the control. At pressure of 0.3 megapascal, the 1 centimeter turbulence promoter is the best. Next, the next figure shows the total resistance for different pressures. As you can see, the turbulence promoter reduces the total resistance in all cases. As the transmembrane pressures increases, the total resistance values increases, and at the same pressures, an increase in the steering velocities increase in the steering velocities reduce the total resistance. The last figure, you can see the ratio of the reversible resistance of the total resistance. The reversible resistance is the largest in all cases. The higher reversible resistance value is advantageous because the layer of resistance causing particles can be easily removed, allowing faster purification and reuse of the membrane. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Nicolette, for your presentation. Okay, next lecture. Cosmina Simona Toder. 1 minute, please. I upload your presentation. Okay, Simona, please give your lecture in 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I manage my presentation or? Sorry. I can't see my presentation.
1 minute, please. I try to upload again, okay?
Okay.
Is it yours?
No.
1 minute, please.
Yes.
It's
Please.
yours.
Yes, thank you. Hello. My name is Cosmina Toader. I'm a lecturer at University of Life Sciences, King Mihai I from Timișoara, at Faculty of Management and Rural Tourism. Yeah, it's a great pleasure for me to participate at Wellman International Scientific Conference this year as well. And before I start my presentation, I want to thank to organizers for this opportunity. So for the next 5 minutes, I will present the main findings of our article entitled Financial Performance of Romanian Waste Collection Businesses. The structure of the presentation is as follows. First is introduction, and after introduction is described the methodology, results and discussion, and the final conclusions. As everyone knows, currently the world population is continuously increasing as our consumption and demands for cleanliness. There will always be garbage, and even its disposal is getting more and more expensive every year, and someone has to deal with it. Waste collection is a stable business model that is resistant to any crisis. And about methodology, the steps that were taken in the elaboration of the article are the following. First, we establish the purpose of the article. And after that, we select and study the specialized literature and statistical reports, and analyzing and interpreting the data. And at last, we draw conclusion. In order to achieve the proposed goal, the authors of the article use as research method, the statistical observation. All information presented in the article are the results of the analysis and interpretation of data from statistical reports and literature that are mentioned at the biography. Graphical representation were used to present the evolution of financial performance indicators, and for euro expression of the values of the analyzed indicator was used an average value for year 2021. In 2021, the number of companies in the field of waste collection were more than 1,000. Actually, it was 1,108. The turnover registered an increase compared to the year before, and in 2021 the turnover was more than 900 million euro. About the net profit was about 60 million of euro, and the net profit margin was almost 6%. The number of companies in the field of waste collection was in 2021 in Romania, as I said, more than 1,000. And this companies contain a number of employees, and the average of number of employees experience a slight fluctuation between the period 2011 and 2021. About the turnover evolution between 2012 and 2021, as is shown in the figure, it will be an increase, and the maximum increase was 80.41%, and the minimum was minus 2.84%. About the estimation, in 2023 it will be an increase, and in 2024 it will be also an increase. Regarding the main indicators of financial performance, like turnover, net profit, and profit margin, the trend is increasing in the analyzed period, even if there are years in which there were decreasing in the values of these indicators. And the main conclusion, in Romania, the growth registered by companies active in the field of garbage collection is not spectacular, but it is constant. In 2021, those 1,108 companies were registered, more than 26,000 of employees. Compared to 2020, the turnover registered an increase of 18.41%, and according to estimate, in 2023, the sector will register an increase of the turnover of 5% compared to the previous year, and in 2024 it is estimated also an increase. Thank you so much for your attention. This was my very short presentation.
Thank you, Cosmina. Thank you. Okay. Next lecturer is Alice Füleki-Veres. 1 minute, please. I upload Alice's presentation. Okay, Alice, are you here?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, please give your presentation in 5 minutes, okay?
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Füleki-Veres Alice. I'm a PhD student of Festetics Doctoral School in Keszthely in Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences. My colleagues in research is Gyöngyi Barna and my team leader, Professor András Makó. The basis of our research is the hydrophilic character of soils. The first question is what the hydrophobic character of soils actually means. The ability of soils to hold and conduct water is one of the most important soil properties for both water management and environmental protection. Hydrophobic soils properties are defined as the phenomenon whereby soils reject water. About its distribution, the number of research focusing on soil's hydrophobic character is increasing in recent decades. However, we don't have an accurate picture of its spread, either globally or regionally. The hydrophobic properties also change in time. Regions with warmer climates and sandy soils may be particularly affected, which will be an even more noticeable phenomenon as climate change processes. Another important question is what the influencing factors might be. The development and hydrophobicity may be influenced by several natural and artificial factors, for example, forest fires, use of manure and organic fertilizers, industrial and communal pollution. The figure 1 of the bottom of the slides describes the connection between contact angle and soil water repellency. The water droplets are spread out widely to maximize the surface area in contact angle with the solid phase. On hydrophobic surface, the water droplets approach a spherical shape as they contact the water repellency surface over a smaller surface area. This is figure 1. And during our preliminary methodological experiment, we used Krush DSL 100 drop shape analyzer to test the wettability of crushed sedimentary rock samples with high clay mineral contact, for example, kaolin, illite, bentonite, and different Hungarian soil and sediment samples, Löss, Hortic terrible, Cambisol, and Gleic vertical. We studied 2 types of sample preparation method, pastille method, PM, and adhesive stripe method, ASM. PM method in the top image in figure 3, and below ASM method you can see in figure 4 the measurement. At first, we measured the contact angle in samples with high clay mineral contact with ASM and PM method. After that, we measured the water drop penetration time in these samples with PM method. In the second step, we examined control and surfactant-treated soil samples, where the cationic surfactant, namely cetylpyridinium chloride, CPC, was absorbed on the surface on the soil samples in monomolecular layer coating. For these samples, we also measured the VDPT values with PM method too. In the third step, we test the appropriate instrument settings, fixed frame rate on some different soil. And last but not least, we test the connection between hydrophobic character and different tillage practice, plugging, shallow cultivating, and direct seeding. And we investigated the contact angle and VDPT with PM method. This slide show our results. In the first contact angle measurement, the PM and ASM method, hydrophobicity sequence were different from the high clay mineral contact samples. The increasing in hydrophobicity of the samples was well detected in the case of surfactant-treated soils, and VDPT values proves this exactly. You can see that in figure 2. And in figure 3, we're comparing different techniques and measuring different soils. And we fine-tuned the frame rate settings. This is most reliable at 320. And in figure 4, we examined the connection between hydrophobicity and different agrotechniques in different samples. And this is the direct seeding. This is the most hydrophobic, and this plugging we are the least hydrophobic. And these are our conclusion. Preliminary test has confirmed that the appropriate preparation pressure during the PM method was 5 tons. In the study of cationic surfactant-treated samples, the results clearly demonstrated the increasing effect of surfactant treatment on the contact angle and the VDPT. The hydrophobicity of the treated samples increased due to the effect of CPC. The hydrophobizing effect of the cultivation method were in line with those described in the literature. In the methodological preliminary experiment, the settings of fixed frame rate values has been shown to have an effect on measured contact angle values. The use of different agrotechniques was also shown the effect of the hydrophobicity of the samples. The CRISP-DSR 100 provides a simple method to characterizing the wetting properties of solid phase, and is therefore important to find the applicability of the development measurement to the soils. The results of our preliminary experiment on the methodology are promising, and it is expected that the indicator of soil wetting properties will be useful in soil physics, soil chemistry, and soil biology. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, next short presenter will be Maid Elayan.
Hello, everyone.
One minute, please. I upload your presentation. Okay, please give your presentation in 10 minutes, okay?
I can do it in 5, but I have uploaded another form because this was intended to be a poster presentation. And if you allow me the...
Okay.
If you allow me to share, I can share my PPT.
Yes. Okay, wait a minute. I think so. But this is your poster, you are saying?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not okay. Something. I'm sorry.
I originally
Csak Timi,
submitted a poster.
lehet, hogy a hölgynek a posztert töltötted föl. Azonban, hogy én nem tudom, mert ugye...
Mindjárt megnézem. Ha csak ezt küldte el, akkor...
De azt mondja, hogy adjunk neki jogosultságot feltölteni.
It's okay, I can give it like this, if it's fine for you.
Of course, yes, but are you sure
Only...
it's okay?
Yeah, I can do it, I think.
Oké, akkor jó lesz így, szerintem.
I can start?
Okay, only give some words, some sentences about your topic, okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my name is Majd Elayan, and I am a PhD student in Food Science Faculty of Agriculture of Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Science. And this is a presentation about the effect of adding different oils on liquid whole egg sensory property. And my colleagues in this kind of research are Professor Csaba Nemeth, my colleague Mongsan Enkult, and my supervisor, Professor Adrian Todt. For those who doesn't really know what a liquid egg is, it's a kind of egg that is liquid, and they are manufactured by, first of all, washing eggs, choosing the high quality eggs, washing them, washing and drying them, then deshelling them, separate them into liquid egg yolk, liquid egg white, and liquid whole egg. After the separation, we have three products that are homogenized, and then depending on the way of preservation, the end product becomes. So if you're after homogenization, you're going with the spray dryer, you have a dried egg product. If you're going with freezing, you have a frozen egg product. And if you're going with refrigerating, you have a pasteurized liquid egg product. I don't know if you see, but anyway, we're working with a very high quality Hungarian company called Capri Ovos, and they are providing us with 4 different kinds of liquid whole egg. One is pasteurized whole egg, the other is pasteurized egg yolk, and then pasteurized egg white and salted whole egg. And the objectives of this study is to evaluate the effect of sensorial properties on liquid whole egg after adding 4 kinds of different oils, which are olive oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, and coconut oil, as a way to create a new product with a high amount of antioxidant. Most customers usually add oil into the pan before cooking any kind of eggs, and this definitely affects their properties and sensory attributes. So this is a kind of a mixture before you pour it in the pan. And for my materials and method, we had 2 kilograms of raw homogenized whole egg. We obtained them from Capri Ovos, and then we fortified them with 2%, 5%, and 7.5% volume per volume of olive oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, and coconut oil. And after that, samples were homogenized. After homogenization, they were cooked into scrambled eggs, and 10 trained panelists tried those eggs to evaluate their sensory attributes. If you look to the right, I think, yes, the right of the poster on the table, you would see that the attributes are taste, smell, color, texture, and overall. And after our panelists tried it, they found that in all overall categories, sunflower percentage scored 4, as well as 2% of olive oil and 5% of coconut oil. But the only sample that ranked really high was coconut oil with 2.5% whole egg with 2.5 of high percent of coconut nut oil. As you can see regarding olive oil, samples were scoring 4 when it was at lowest concentration, which is 2.5%. Then the overall was decreasing. The score of overall for olive oil was decreasing as the olive oil percentage were increasing. Taste, color, smell also were decreasing as olive oil percentages were decreasing. Panelists all agreed that 5% of palm oil smelled the best, and 2.5% of coconut, sunflower oil texture was the best comparison to all other samples. As for conclusion, after cooking sample, panelists found that sunflower 5% and coconut 2.5% were the best in terms of color, taste, and texture, while coconut 5% and palm 5% smelled the best. As this conclude that we can create a new product fortified with liquid oils, kind of form oils, to create a liquid whole egg that can be poured into the cooking pan with no need to add anything instead of salt. Thank you.
Thank you, Maid.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next lecturer is Gergely Tóth.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I upload your presentation. One minute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, please give your presentation in 10 minutes, okay? It's a short presentation.
10?
Can you see your post?
5 minutes, no?
5, okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. 1 minute.
Can I start?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Where is the red point, please? Oh, no. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to everybody. I'm Gergely Tóth, and my presentation is Behavior Pattern of Roe deer at Feeding Places revealed by camera trapping in the Hungarian Great Plain. My co-authors are Natania Ferreira de Souza and Christian Katona. In the Hungarian Great Plain, the roe deer is one of the most important and numerous big game species for wildlife management. The supplementary feeding of roe deer in Hungary is a traditional habit, but the supplementary feeding should have many benefits, but it has disadvantages also. To perform an efficient supplementary feeding program, we have to know the behavioral habits of roe deer at feeding places. Our goals were: how does the number of roe deer using the feeders change throughout the months? What is the difference in the daily activity pattern of female, male, and kid roe deer? And how does the climate, first of all, snowfall and snow-covered days, affect roe deer activity? Materials and methods. The location of study areas are in the middle of the Hungarian Great Plain. We can see the yellow circle, where are the study areas, and we can see 2 photos about feeding places of study areas in Határvölgyi and Robinia. The camera model used was a very high quality UV vision camera. We very like to use this type of camera because of it has very good quality photo. The camera data were collected in Határvölgyi from November 18, 2019 until March 13, 2020, generating more than 13,000 pictures in total. In the Romania location, data were collected from September 10, 2019 until March 25, 2020 for a total of more than 5,000 pictures. Every 2 studio areas, the data collecting started at first time of feed placement. For both locations, the cameras operated continuously, covering the entire outsource period, apart from a few days of discharge. The pictures collected were imported and processed using the time-lapse software. We had many of categories. The different categories of roe deer was adult, female, male, kid, and unidentified roe deer. And log was included in the template, snow. Results. The appearance by months in all of 2 studio areas was the highest in January. We can see that the start of feed placement, first placement to get higher and higher to January and get lower and lower to the end of feeding period. In the study area of Határvölgyi are more roe deer. This is the reason of the higher value. The correlation between proportion of snowy days and feeding activity was very strong. And the daily activity, we can see the daily activity was very high in the sunrise and sundown, and the number of male was the biggest all of 2 period of day. And it's very interesting because of the number of female was higher all of 2 studio areas as number of males. The roe deer showed activity at the feeder in all of investigated months. This was the supplementary feeding period. The typical activity pattern of roe deer is characterized by peaks of activity at dawn and dusk, before sunrise, after sunset, and just before night. The activity pattern for both sexes were the same. This means didn't was statistical difference between 2 sexes. Snowy days affected feeding activity, but we expected it, of course. Very important, the practical aspect, in my opinion. It was not possible to calculate what proportion of the population is being benefited. How is winter feeding effective for the individual as opposed to the population itself? To use individual recognition methods on the deer to understand their individual behavior better, for example, marking or collaring. Does it have a big change, big ask? Does it have an impact on survival, reproduction, and antler quality? And we big study, we are looking for this answer. And very important, the game managers should know how to validate the effectiveness of this expensive intervention, because of what is uneconomical maybe should not be done. Thank you for your attention.
Very much. Just a short question. So, very good presentation, very interesting. And
I don't hear good, Laci.
Can you listen now? No?
More sound, please.
Can you listen? No?
Yes.
Okay, just a short
question. A little bit better.
Okay. So just a short question that it was a very interesting and very informative presentation. So you are saying that maybe this kind of feeding, winter feeding, is not so necessary in the case of the roe deer as we believed before, and maybe not so how can I say, averse it economically. So maybe we should decrease this kind of supplement or because this is I think we spoke before on last year about this topic, and it was very interesting. So in so many hunter unities, they are doing this kind of practice. I mean, the feeding of the roe deer in the winter also, but maybe not the best way. So what do you think is maybe not so effective as they believe, not so necessary?
Our big study, we are trying to know the effectiveness of supplementary feeding. We have to do many work for it, but nowadays climate changes. I think maybe the causes of the supplementary feeding is not so necessary what the hunters are knowing about it.
Yeah.
Just in my opinion, we are trying to know, and we are looking for the answers.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was really
Thank you.
presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay. I would like to thank you for everybody, colleagues, students, and audience today. I think it was a very successful and useful day. Your presentation were very good and exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Laci, for your work.
Thank you very much for all of the presentation and all the participation. And I wish a beautiful day to everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay, I close this session. Thank you.
Okay.